Bitcoin securitization and Bitcoin backed, companies effectively buying Bitcoin and not selling it.
Right.
And if you look at that category, it's dominated by MicroStrategy. But if you look at that category, it's like 750,000 Bitcoins or something like that are owned by Bitcoin treasury companies. Project that number forward. Like if you increase the number of Bitcoin treasury companies and you increase their time in market and you increase, let's say, their ability to find additional financing or dilution events because the price of Bitcoin is going up and that's like driving liquidity into these instruments, then they're going to be able to continue to grow at an ever increasing rate the amount of Bitcoin held by those types of vehicles. And so, if 750,000 Bitcoins becomes 3 million Bitcoins or 4 million Bitcoins, like it's going to cause a massive supply shock. And it's like, well, how do you get the Bitcoin out of those companies once it goes in? And so ultimately, like if the sailors of the world can accumulate too much Bitcoin, it doesn't matter if people are rebalancing or not. There's just going to be a massive squeeze on the market, and until those businesses, until sailors willing to sell some Bitcoin, like there's no solution for it. I mean, It's absolute scarcity.
Yeah, and typically you think about price elasticity, and there's always enough, whatever asset to go around at the right price. But someone like Sailor probably at no price he's selling, and so maybe some of that price elasticity doesn't actually work out in some of these hands. I'm curious how you think about it. You recently had tweeted that there's a few new public companies announcing Bitcoin treasuries every week. Soon it'll be every day. 1,000 cash flowing and capital raising public equities listed in every market, including in every index, repackaging in every wrapper, et cetera, every single day. I'm curious how you think about, and I know Bitcoin Magazine Pro now has like a tracker where you're tracking like publicly traded companies that have a Bitcoin treasury. But how you think about like the public companies as a Bitcoin treasury versus like a strategy type company? Because the way I think about it is like, if you're just like putting part of my treasury on Bitcoin, so what? Like Apple's sitting on billions of dollars, like what do they have that billions of dollars in? Do I really care? Does it really affect what their market cap is? And so if they decide to put some of that into Bitcoin, I mean, it's great for Bitcoin in a sense where it's, buying it up, but does it really affect Apple? So, obviously MicroStrategy is creating financial products out of that. But if Apple does it really? And I guess, so that's where I'm thinking, when it's just a treasury company, or is it like a treasury strategy for the stock?
Yeah. So I think, what Sailor is doing is monetizing volatility. And so you want max volatility. And, I think for somebody like Apple, where they have an underlying business that has a massive enterprise value, that's going to mute the volatility of the stock because the business is going to be disconnected from the performance of the balance sheet. And so, I don't think it would work as well for a company like Apple. But, at the end of the day, in the long-term view of the terminal value of Bitcoin, Bitcoin as the reserve asset of the world. One Bitcoin is, 1/21 millionth of
all the world,
of all the value.
Yeah.
So as I think Apple would be very wise to lock down a couple of percentage points of the supply, with their Bitcoin. But I don't think it'll have the same effect as it does for Sailor. Sailor is Sailor's a genius, and I'm really interested in seeing like what instruments he creates next. And, Strike and Strife. I mean, I was looking up what other, STR, 4-letter acronyms that he can create. And there's quite a few, actually. So I can already predict like a couple that might be coming.
Yeah.
I think, what he's doing is really introducing new levers to create volatility and to tap different parts of his cap stack with different types of buyers. And like, I think the big picture thing that Sailor has taught me, which is, so obvious in retrospect, is like you meet the buyer where they are and you sell them Bitcoin in whatever form or fashion they need to be able to buy.
Boom.
Which is like,
yeah.
That's like sales 101, like sales 101. So he's really pioneered this. And I think this has so many layers to it. He can go so much deeper. He's really pioneering the way. The way I'm approaching these things is much more 60 IQ. I don't have the strategist mind of Sailor or the brilliance of Sailor. So, I'm just taking the easiest structures to replicate, and I'm spreading them horizontally into other markets rather than doing, basically scaling vertically into other instruments. And so, I think like this, there's just massive expansion of this terrain. Like, Strife and Strike could be recreated for every other international market as well. Like every product that Sailor's spitting out could be rebuilt and repackaged for every domestic capital market, wherever there's captured liquidity. What these products are going to have buyers.
Okay. So that's what I was trying to understand. So when you say, when you talk about all these public companies and announcing Bitcoin treasury programs, it's not the Apples of the world that have a big treasury and they're allocating some to Bitcoin. It's other companies that are actually bringing some Bitcoin products to market, but not maybe in so much in the U.S. markets because maybe a lot of that's already sort of taken. But how do we launch that in Japan or India or Brazil or something like that? Is that kind of maybe more?
Yeah. And I was really combining the two. So, I mean, I see both of them as complementary to each other. But yeah, I think they are fundamentally different. I think that there is room, though, in the U.S. for there to be multiple micro strategies. I think even Saylor says, there's 10 companies that are going to be $1 trillion companies. And, there's 100 companies that are going to be $100 billion companies. And there's 1,000 that are going to be 10 billion and, so on and so forth. Yep. And, when I think about what a Bitcoin treasury company is, in my mind, it's the new form of a Bitcoin exchange. Like that's effectively what you're doing is you're creating a vehicle for people to get exposure to Bitcoin. And rather than having to connect your bank account and go through KYC and, blah, 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 fund your account, instead, like you just take your brokerage account and you go buy this instrument and boom, now you have exposure to Bitcoin. And, so like how many Bitcoin exchanges can the United States support?
Right.
More than one.
Yeah.
Like every one of these businesses, they have their own network to go to, their own customer base, their own way to market the product. Like each of these is going to have their incremental differences. And so I think there's space for many players to compete. And I think competition is really healthy and all of them win together by, any of them succeeding.
Yeah. Well, that's the good thing about wealth. It's not a zero-sum game, right? The more wealth that's created, the more wealth we have. And I guess if you think about sort of like Saylor already creating 3 different products off of it, I mean, then you just extrapolate that. I mean, there's potentially infinite amount of products that could be created with more creativity.
Correct.
Kind of like that.
Correct. It's like it's a new asset class, and it's like it will balloon in size, and every new innovative product that's created, you're going to have 100 investment bankers figuring out how to clone the product, repackage it, and sell it in a different market.
Yeah.
And so like this is going to be a gold rush of just securitization of new instruments and accessing new markets.
Yeah. One thing I took away when I left the Abu Dhabi event at Bitcoin Mina was like Bitcoin's coming for every area of finance, just completely every area of finance. And I used to be in creative financing. I had my finance lender's license here in California, and we did like invoice factoring and purchase order financing and first trust deed, et cetera. And all of a sudden, my creative financing mind started thinking about all these different financial products, lending products mostly, that Bitcoin can slip into. And I know there's several that are already underway and some I'm working on as well. And so, I mean, it's really infinite, right? As far as the mind can imagine these things, I guess. Yeah, we just have more ideas, more ways.
We're cannibalizing the capital markets, and we are. I mean, this is how Bitcoin takes over. I mean, this is the thing. Like, this is how it takes over, and it's not that we overnight shut down and cast out the institutions that rule the world today. It's that we force the institutions to engage in this new economy, this new market. And if they don't, then we will, and it'll be forced upon them. And so, it's very interesting to watch. It's very interesting to watch.